فمن اتقى وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Today I want to discuss a few things about Aqidah, and we'll discuss it in a very concise manner, but inshallah a beneficial manner for the du'at. First thing I want to begin with the hadith that Imam Muslim has related from Jabir radiallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us that the one who meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without associating anything in ibadah with him, yani not making any shirk, he will enter Jannah. And whoever meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associating anything with him, yani ibadah, will be thrown in the nar. And this is also reported in the two Sahih, reported from Uthman bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that Allah has forbidden the hellfire for those who say La ilaha illallah. So mukhlisan, in one of the riwayat it says with ikhlas, yani who says it with ikhlas. One of the Sahaba, he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what is the meaning of ikhlas? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that it keeps him away from all bad deeds. So what does that tell us? That in essence, whoever has this aqidah of believing only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is safe from the nar and will enter Jannah. But we also shouldn't get the misunderstanding from this hadith. What we should understand is that this is the key, this is the element that enters us into Jannah, not making shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who take into shirk, whether it be worshipping the son of any man, or worshipping the father of any man, or worshipping a prophet. For example, Isa alayhi salam, he's a prophet, he doesn't have a father, but worshipping him, or worshipping a cow or a monkey or a statue or a saint or even a pious man. A prophet is a pious man, but he still isn't worthy of being worshipped. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that. So whoever takes that aqidah, this is their entry into Jannah. But that comes with ahkam. You can't say that I said La ilaha illallah and then I'm going to do all the shirk I want and I'm going to enter Jannah. No, it's not just saying the words. Otherwise, the munafiqeen, the people who used to be from the people of nifaq, that were given the glad tidings of Jahannam, they used to say La ilaha illallah. They used to say it with their mouth. So this tells us that there is more to this kalima than just saying it with the tongue. What we know from the ulama is in explaining this, like Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali in Fath al-Bari, not the one by Ibn Hajar, but the one by Ibn Rajab. He says that for a person to be qualified to enter Jannah based on this kalima, they have to have three things. One, they have to believe it in their heart. Yani this is something very important. Some people may say, the Muslims, they converted people by force. But this is impossible, because when you want to become a Muslim, there has to be taslim bil qalb. Yani you have to accept it with the heart. Yani if you say that somebody put a sword and made somebody Muslim, it's impossible. And that's why you see historically this didn't happen. And for you, du'at, this is very important to understand, because people are trying to put out a propaganda against Islam, a false history. And you need to know the real history to explain it to them. So you need to tell them, when the Muslims, they conquered Spain, and this is a historic fact, you can Google it, you can look it up, that the Muslims did rule Spain. Now, during that time, did the Muslims exterminate everybody else and only leave Muslims in Spain? No. Historically, they allowed there to be Jews and their synagogues, they allowed there to be Christians and their churches, they allowed there to be other religions and people who would follow their own path under the Islamic government. Because you couldn't force somebody to become Muslim. They gave them a choice, they gave them da'wah. Yes, now, a concept that's going to get questioned a lot in your da'wah is going to be jizya. What about jizya? Right? The non-Muslim tax. It's not a non-Muslim tax. This is a foolish way to explain it. As Ibn al-Qayyim has an amazing book, it's called Ahkam Ahlul Dhimma, the ahkam of the non-Muslims living under the Islamic Khilafah. He explains that the Muslim has zakat. A Muslim has to pay zakat, right? Every Muslim, it's fard on us to pay zakat if you have the wealth. So if you're living in a Muslim state And the Muslims are paying zakah, going into Baytul Mal, helping the poor, helping those that are involved with zakah, helping those that come under the category of those that can be given zakah. And the non-Muslim doesn't pay it, then it's not fair. In an Islamic state, we don't really have taxes. Having taxes, this is a foreign concept to the true message of Islam. You have ghanima, you have jizya, you have zakah, you have sadaqah, you have these things, but you don't have taxes, sales tax and wealth tax, even though the Muslim countries may have it today, but it's not an Islamic concept. This trade tax, subhanallah, those people right on the right wing that are always against taxes, if they understood the Islamic method of governors, if they really understood it, the Tea Party would be supporting Sharia. But it's because of their ignorance and because of their ta'assub, their partisanship, that they don't want to understand what the Sharia really brings. So, when you have non-Muslims living in a Muslim state, they will be enjoying protection, they will be enjoying the social and the different aspects of governance that's being given to them, the police force that will be there to enforce security that they will be enjoying. And the Muslims are paying into Baytul Mal to help run these things. So in that sense, as Muslims have zakah, the non-Muslims, because we cannot make zakah fard on them, they have jizya. So this is not something that is a tax only on them. You have to explain this in your da'wah, that this is from the fairness of Islam. This is from the adl of the Islamic Sharia, that everybody has to pay something to run the government that's giving you those benefits. So this is the concept of jizya. Now, in Spain, those people who were not Muslims, they enjoyed their life. If you look at historically, they enjoyed many freedoms. Historically, when the Christians retook Spain, when they fought and they conquered Spain, what did they do? What they did was called the Spanish Inquisition. Look it up. You should know about this so that when somebody questions, you can give them an educated answer. They didn't allow any Muslims to live. They killed them. They even killed the Jews that lived in Spain. Either you converted to Christianity or you were killed. Mosques were burnt. People were massacred until no Muslims were left in Spain. No Jews were left except those who either faked their conversion or went underground. Subhanallah. So historically, when you look at what happened, you will be able to use this in their da'wah. People today only look at history in the last 10 years or 50 years or 20 years. You have to explain history much longer, in a bigger scope than that. Now, let's look at another example. Let's look at Palestine, right? Masjid al-Quds, where you have al-Quds, Masjid al-Aqsa, the blessed mosque, and the places around it, al-Quds, the holy city. When the Crusaders attacked and killed and conquered these areas, how did they act? How did they act? Go look it up in your history books. What massacres did they do? What mass genocide and rape did they conduct? What looting and killing did they do? And when Salahuddin Ayyubi, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him victorious to take back Al-Quds, how did he act? Even according to the Orientalists, or even those that are against Islam, have to admit that he didn't allow there to be killing or rape or forced conversions, and he protected the Christians and Jews that lived there. All the way until this Zionist state was established, there were Christians and Jews living there with Muslims in peace. Until, subhanallah, a strange thing happened. Germany, a place in Europe, apparently, if I'm correct, it's in Europe, they massacred Jewish citizens. They did what's called the Holocaust. 2 million, 6 million, 12 million, I'm not sure exactly, but there was a Holocaust. A lot of people were killed, and it was a horrible thing. We as Muslims condemn the killing of any innocent person, whether it's done by a Christian named Hitler, or by a Muslim, or by a Jew, or by a Hindu. We condemn all of that, right? So Hitler, in Germany, he did this thing called the Holocaust. And because of that, they took away a land that the people of Palestine were living in peacefully and gave it to the Jews. What would make sense is if you took a piece of Germany, because not the Palestinians didn't do the Holocaust, right? You should have cut a piece of Germany and given it to the Jews and said, hey, it was a horrible thing, here's a homeland. But how does it make sense that you go to a people that weren't even involved in that massacre, and you take their home and you make them refugees and you kick them out of their houses? And now you see in Jordan, there's a population of 5 million, almost 4 million of them are Palestinians. You see all over the world Palestinian refugees because they were forced out of their own homes because of what Hitler did. So you should blame Hitler, take a piece of Germany, not the Palestinians. And all these problems and killings that they started because of the Zionist state, because of this forced exile that these people were put into, and nobody thinks about that. I've been to Palestine, and I've been to what is currently known as Israel, and I've been to Jerusalem, which is Al-Aqsa, where Masjid Al-Aqsa is. It's called Al-Quds Islamically. And when you go there, you will find that even a regular citizen of Israel who's Jewish can walk around with a machine gun. I saw people, they weren't police officers, they weren't army officials, they could walk around with machine guns. And even the Palestinians that were working for the Israeli state, they wouldn't let them carry guns. You know? So what kind of apartheid state is that? Where your citizens don't have equal rights and they have no way to complain. If there is something that's wrong done to them, who do they go to? The government is a religiously run Jewish state. You know, when they talk about separation between church and state, and they talk about Saudi Arabia and this, how come nobody condemns Israel? When they clearly don't believe in separation between church and state. It's a Jewish state, right? So we need to be educated, and in our da'wah, we need to explain this. So when we talk about saying La ilaha illallah, this is a means of success. But we also know that the Muslim needs to do good actions. We need to tell people that we don't think just because we're born in a Muslim household we're going to Jannah. That's not our belief. You know, our belief is that you have to believe in Allah. You have to do good deeds. You have to call towards Allah. You have to be patient. Like 𝐻𝐴صr, we explained that in the last dars. And you have to explain that a Muslim has to do good. A Muslim has to be pious. He has to be righteous. And remember that a Muslim, we don't believe that our deeds will enter us into Jannah. Only the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us in the Sahih Hadith, that nobody will enter Jannah on their deeds. They say, Ya Rasulullah, not even you? He says, not even me, unless Allah enshrouds me with His mercy. But we do good deeds in order to gain that mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to earn that mercy, to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we are trying. So with this, I want to quote from you something, one of the great scholars of the past, and if you don't know him, you should, 𝐿-𝐿qayyim, an amazing scholar. He says that Allah will forgive the sins of those who have pure belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who never spoil their belief with shirk, unlike those who do that. Thus, if a believer who never does shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has so many sins to equal the size of the earth, Allah will forgive them in that amount, bringing equal amount of forgiveness. Meanwhile, those who believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are but deficient in that aqidah, in that belief, they bring that shirk, then they will not be forgiven. The one who does shirk will not be forgiven. Hence, the Muslim who sincerely believes in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and whose belief is not spoiled with any kind of shirk, they will have all of his sins forgiven. And this is because of the sincere belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It implies, what does that imply? Exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment, and hoping for His mercy. And all of that results in the removing of one's sins, even if they are equal to the amount of the size of the earth. And thus, impurity caused by sins is accidental, and the good deeds, they cleanse those because of their strength. And then he brings many other dalail. He shows the proofs from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that when he told Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anhu that if you sin, follow it up with a good deed, because the good deed erases the bad deed. Ibn al-Qayyim also mentions an amazing example. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the Jannah pure. It's something clean, pure. So it is a destination for the pure. So when a mu'min who is pure dirties him sins, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets up ways for cleansing him. Now, somebody in your da'wah may ask you that how come if Muslims are such good people and you guys are on the right, how come all the Muslim countries are in trouble and all the Muslim countries are starving and all of them have war and the Western countries are enjoying peace? How come? So we have to explain to them that the Muslims today, unfortunately, have gone off track, and Allah is cleansing us. He is reminding us. He is bringing us back on track. And when the Muslims were on track, like in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, we see a time that one of the Western philosophers, he was writing, he says, this is the only time we see in the history of mankind, Muslim and non-Muslim history together, that people were walking around with charity to be given out and there was nobody to take it. In the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, they would have the zakah and they would be walking around the street saying, who's ready to take it? And everybody would have istighna. They were like, we're fine. Why? Two reasons. One, because of the honesty of the people. Today, somebody will be rich, but they'll be on welfare. Today, they'll be rich, but they'll be trying to prove themselves poor to take zakah. They'll be rich, but they'll be trying to rip somebody off. Because we don't have the fulfillment that comes with having that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In those times, somebody could be poor, but they were happy with what they had. So they didn't need the zakah money. And secondly, because when people actually pay zakah, there is barakah, there is khair, there is blessings. So it increases and poverty is finished. But when people, like in our times, when the 1% controls the wealth, and when the few percent of the world control everything, and even though we have enough food to feed mankind, it's not that our population is out of control, it's not that. Because if you look at the distribution of where food is used, these few Western countries are the ones that get all the food and throw it in their trash. Go out to a hometown buffet or these places afterwards and you'll see the dumpsters filled with good food. But those countries like countries in the continent of Africa that are producing the food, they are the ones sending the food. They are the ones with the most fertile of land. They are the ones that aren't getting the food. So when you have injustice like this, then you will see people starving. You will see these types of situations. You will see where people are filthy rich, but they're not satisfied. Islam is that moderation between capitalism and socialism. Muslims are not socialists and we're not capitalists. Nobody's a pure capitalist, to be honest with you. Even these people on the real right wing of politics in America, even they are not pure capitalists, because in a pure capitalistic society, you wouldn't have anything like the Better Business Bureau. You wouldn't have laws to protect against monopolies. You would have big fish eats little fish. It would be chaos. Even Donald Trump doesn't believe in that. So on the left, when you see pure communism, an extreme, you see it's also impractical. Because if a doctor and somebody who's a street sweeper make the same in salary, live the same, then who's going to go to the extra school years of 6 and 7 and 8 and 10, 11, 12 years of med school and specialization to make the same money as somebody who didn't go to school and just polishes somebody's shoes? That's also not practical. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that middle path, that beautiful example that we need to present to this country that we live in as citizens of America as a model of governance. Why are we ashamed of that? Look, people on the right, an extreme right, they present their views. Even if it's against the Constitution of America, they present their views as a solution. People on the left that are socialist, extreme left, they present their views as a solution for America. And America has always been where sometimes we go to the right and sometimes to the left, sometimes it's prohibition, sometimes it's lifted. People give ideas. So we as Muslims need to present solutions. If we look at what happened in the bubble bursting and the financial crisis, we as Muslims could have prevented that, because we would have presented a system without riba, without interest, a banking system that would be free from these types of cycles. But because we're too ashamed and too busy apologizing and trying to fit in and melt in, we didn't present what would have benefited this country. So we need to present that. We need to present this idea. We need to present that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us with a gift, with a means of guidance for mankind. So we shouldn't be ashamed of this. Understanding that when we give da'wah, we are becoming a means of saving people from an-nar, saving people from eternal damnation. So we need to give it that importance. Whether it's raining, whether it's cloudy, whether it's difficult, we need to give it importance. If we look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, like we're doing in the durus and seerah, you will see the amount of hardships the Sahaba radiallahu anhum went through. Why? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam could have stayed in the haram and made his ibadah the best of ibadah. Nobody can make ibadah like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In the best of times, in the best of places, the best of mankind. But Instead, he was going to the kuffar, and they were beating him, and they were trying to kill him, and they were trying to assassinate him, and they were making up lies against him, as we know what happened in Ta'if and other places, and there were battles, and there were people who became shuhada. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ understood that those who die upon shirk, they will have eternal damnation. So we need to be concerned for people. We need to have love for people. We need to have that worry for people to become a means of da'wah. And when we're doing it, we need to be patient. In our da'wah, we need to call towards La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. But we also need to understand that that's not it. As we discussed now, the first thing, to have that true belief. Then we need to have a speech of confirming that. We need to confirm that belief in our heart, bil lisan, with our tongue. So if somebody wants to become Muslim and they have that belief already, they need to confirm that with their tongue by saying the Shahada. And then we need to prove that belief with af'al, with actions. It's not enough that somebody says La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and then they're done. No, there have to be actions. Because there's a proof for everything. Imagine somebody who truly believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them to this earth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Qur'an, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this prophet. They truly believe that, and then they don't make salah. This doesn't happen. This doesn't mix. This is a contradiction. Because if you really believe that, and you see in the Qur'an how many ayat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to establish the salah, and you hear the Prophet ﷺ's hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ told us, Man tarku salah faqad kafar. The one who leaves the salah, completely makes tark, has done kufr. Then how can we leave the salah? So we need to encourage people, when we give da'wah, don't just be, okay, take the shahada. You could trick somebody into the shahada. You could tell somebody, hey, there was a boxer, Naseem something, Prince Naseem. Yeah, the Yemeni brother from England. And when they announced the person coming in, they announced the greatest, this, blah, blah, blah. In one of his boxing fights, he gave them a script, because you can give a script for them to announce. So he had the announcer say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, in his introduction. Does that mean that announcer became Muslim? No. Because if he didn't have the belief in the heart, and he didn't have the intention of saying it with belief, then just saying it doesn't make you a Muslim. Many people, they take a book, and they have this kalima written on it, and in reading the book, they read it. It doesn't make them a Muslim. So in your da'wah, don't just be really quick to try to give out a shahada. Instead, try to make sure that the person's belief is there, and there is a system to follow up with them. A system to teach them. And if you don't have a lot of time, then try to teach them the importance of being with the Muslim community, wherever they are. There was a brother who came here a few Jum'ahs ago, and he took the Shahada here, and he was from South Lake Tahoe. And we give them the Shahada. He had the belief before Jum'ah. I confirmed with him, made sure he believed, he understood, and we gave him books. But the most important thing we tried to do with him is to try to connect him to a masjid. Even though there was no masjid in his city, whatever is close to him. Why? Because tomorrow he's going to have questions about ghusl, and about wudu', and about salah, and about nikah, and about many issues. And if he's not connected with the community, then what's going to happen to him? How many brothers have we seen, they take shahadas at conferences and Jum'ah, and everybody's happy, and then we never see that brother again? Where's he at for Jum'ah? Where's he at for Fajr? Where's he at for his understanding of Tahara? So we need to establish a true Muslim. We need to be concerned. And when somebody becomes Muslim, we need to take responsibility of that person, of making sure they get married, of making sure that they find halal ways of making money, to making sure they understand and they develop in their aqidah, in their manhaj, in their belief, to making sure that they learn the ibadat correctly. This is a responsibility. So when you have these types of times, very important to try to build that connection. If you don't have a lot of time, then this is why I sent out those books to you, so you can read those and understand the basics of aqidah. And I'm going to go over some of the basics with you, inshallah. But this is the ABCs. It's the very beginning. We as Muslims, we believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that doesn't just mean that we say Allah is one and that's enough. No, there's a lot more to tawheed than that. Some people, they say, why do you not consider this person Muslim or that person Muslim? They believe in Allah. But what do you mean they believe in Allah? Well, they believe in Allah, but they say they're Baha'i. They also believe in Krishna and Vishnu and this and that. Well, that's not believing in Allah. To believe in Allah, you have to make kufr of everything else except what Allah has ordained to the Quran and Sunnah. Yani, the people of Quraysh, they used to have the word Allah. They used to have the name Abdullah. There are many kuffar from before Islam whose names were Abdullah. Right? And when you ask them, as we know from the Quran, if you ask them who made the samawat, who made the sky, they would say, Qalu, Allah. So they believed in one aspect of Tawheed, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. They would believe that Allah created everything. But this is one aspect, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, to believe that Allah is the Rabb. Allah is the creator, the sustainer, the one who fashioned, the one who developed everything that's in the universe, the one who sustains it, the one who orders it. This is one aspect of Tawheed. But this is not the complete Tawheed. There is also Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, that none can be worshipped except Allah. So now if somebody comes to you and says, I'm a Muslim, but I also believe that you can worship Isa as well. You can worship, I'm a Muslim, I believe in the Quran, but I also believe the Hindu Gita is true. This is not Islam. That person is not a Muslim. If they believe that Allah can do everything, but when this but comes, there's a problem. But this saint, if you go to the grave and if you make 10 sajdas to the saint, then you will get kids. Then they have made shirk. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't ordain this for us. In our ummah, the sajda has been confined only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in your da'wah, you may get a question from an educated person. They may say, if you say that you can't make sajda to other than Allah, what about the malaika making sajda to Adam alayhi salam? What about the family of Yusuf, according to some of the mufassirin, making sajda to Yusuf alayhi salam? So we say, sajda, dua, adhkar, these are all forms of ibadah. And in the earlier there were certain rules that were given to them that we don't have. For example, they couldn't get ghanima. They would have their own ahkam. In our ummah, from the Sahih hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that when the rocks and trees and things made sujood to Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, they asked the Prophet ﷺ that we want to make sajda to you too. We love you as well, as a way of showing love. But what did the Prophet ﷺ tell us? No, this has been forbidden. Nobody is allowed to make sajda to anybody in this ummah. The sajda is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the meaning of the hadith. So what does that tell us? According to the rules of this ummah, we cannot make sajda to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to a peer, not to a grave, not to anything else. Only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed the malaika and He gave them the order to do it. This was at that time. And that hukam is there. In the essence, it is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we make wudu, why do we wash our hands like this and why do we do this? We can give a lot of hikam, and a lot of our du'at, they get too caught up in this. Oh, when you wash your face like this, you get this benefit, and when you do this, you get this scientific benefit. And these are hikam, these are wisdoms. It's good to know them, it's good to use them, but always go back to the asl. Go back to the base, which is what? Obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, if you think about it, like one brother, he said that this wudu of washing, this was only when the people lived in the deserts. And this man claimed to be a Muslim. He said because they were dirty, there was dust, so they would make wudu. Today we're clean, we don't need to. So one of our brothers, mashallah, he made rad. He gave a very beautiful answer. He told him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained for us in the Quran that when you don't find water, what do? You make tayammum with what? The earth, the dust. Even though the dust is going to make you dustier. But in essence, the wudu has a spiritual aspect as well, which people forget. That there is a spiritual aspect that is the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not about just washing your face and إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. If somebody just goes and washes their face and hand without the niyyah for wudu, it's not wudu. So we need to explain to the kuffar about Islam, that it is obedience to our Creator. And that's why my nasiha to you, when you give da'wah, always take it back to what do you believe in. Because in your da'wah tables, you're going to get a lot of questions about the beard, hijab, the ahkam for the zaniya, for everything that you can think of, salah, siyam, why do you do it this way, why do you do it that way? We need to always explain first that because we believe in the Qur'an being the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of that, we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do this. Right? So if you want to argue with me about the niqab or hijab, let's take it back first. Do you believe the Qur'an are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If you don't, let me present to you my case, my argument, why they are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then if you believe in that, then after that we can discuss all the ahkam all day long until the cows come home or whatever, because then I can show you from the Qur'an and Sunnah why we do what we do. So when we present this da'wah, we have to take it back to the essence. And the first thing we need to discuss with them is whether they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. That's the first thing. If somebody is an atheist, then it's a different way to approach them. You need to approach them in using their own common sense and understanding that there has to be a creator, there has to be a purpose to life. And inshallah, you guys can look at some of the books of the du'at to see what are the best ways to reach out about trying to show to the people that there is a creator. Now I'm going to suggest some books and some authors, but I want to put a disclaimer out first. Some of these authors may have mistakes. I'm not saying that if I suggest some book that's 100% perfect. The only book on the face of the earth that is 100% without a doubt, with no mistakes or any shortcoming, is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا ريب فيه يعني الكتاب الله فقط. So this is something that you need to understand. After that, people are human beings. Even muhaddithin, scholars of hadith, they would put together books of hadith. Now we know like Bukhari and Muslim are two books without da'if ahadith, but we don't say they're perfect, because then you would have to say it's comparison to the book of Allah. We say Al-Bukhari ashal kitab ba'd kitab Allah. It is the most authentic book after the book of Allah, but it is still after the book of Allah. After that, you see many other books of hadith like At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Nisa'i, Al-Bazzar, Al-Bayhaqi, the Musnad Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. All of these are great, amazing books, but many of them have da'if and matruk and extremely weak ahadith. So we need to be careful. Don't be so binary that either somebody has to be 100% great or we burn everything they have. Imam al-Nawawi, Ibn Hajar, rahmakullah, these great scholars, they made mistakes, but they have a lot of benefit. So we don't burn their books, but we don't follow their mistakes either. So some of the du'at, they have mistakes, leave their mistakes and take the good that they give you. And how would you know? You need to be connected with the people of knowledge. You need to be within durus, you need to be with ulama, you need to be with tullab ilm, whatever you have access to. And when you see something that somebody says, you can take it to them and say, I read this, what do you think? I heard this, what do you think? And you can be clear, inshallah, without falling into those mistakes. Now, those du'at that have written about science and Islam and the Qur'an and its miracles, you need to study those things. But be careful, because some of them, they went to an extreme. Like there is that one out of Turkey, what's his name? Umar Ungut? No, not Ungut. Harun Yahya. I found many of his books contained a lot of Islamic creedal mistakes. Even if he did some things good, but some of his tafsir of hadith in trying to fit it in to what he thought was right, he made extreme mistakes. So I would suggest not to read his books. So those kinds of people, they have these kinds of mistakes where they try to fit their ideas. Rashad, Khalifa, whatever, that claim to be a prophet, whatever he may have gotten right, I would suggest you completely stay away from these people, because their basis of aqidah had extreme mistakes in him. Now, after that, Dr. Miras Bukai, who wrote about the Bible, the Quran and science, I believe that's the name of the book, he also has some mistakes, but there are some beneficial things in his books. Dr. Zakir Naik has also written some books about the Quran and science, and he also has some mistakes, but there are a lot of beneficial things that he has pointed. Ahmad Didat also has some mistakes, but he has many beneficial things that he's put together. So you can make those works a starting point, and using the people of ilm, the people of knowledge, to make sure you're not going in the wrong understanding, you can present some of those scientific miracles. You can present many of the linguistic miracles of the Quran, and some of the tafasir and some of the durus that we did here pointed out many of the linguistic miracles in the Quran, and you can show those to people. You can show that a man who was unlettered, he was not able to read could not have possibly been able to come up with something like this. And you can find the writings of many non-Muslims that have admitted to this. And you can present these as a beginning of da'wah. But remember, this is just the beginning. Your true da'wah is telling them what Allah has told us to tell them about the oneness of Allah, about the day of judgment, about the hereafter, about life, about death, about those things that are in the Qur'an, and that's the true da'wah. And for those, as I said, you can rely on the books of the authentic and reliable ulama like Shaykh Abdulaziz ibn Baz and Shaykh ibn Uthman and Shaykh ibn Jibreen and Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan and many of the other ulama like Shaykh Albani and many other ulama like those. May Allah have mercy on all of them, and may Allah accept them for what they have done for this ummah. With that, you can present those works and you can present that ideology. Now, when you get questions, if you know the answer, give the answer. If you don't know the answer, don't be shy to say, I don't know. Let's do this. Why don't you come to the mosque? We have dinner on Thursday nights, Saturday nights. We'll sit down, we'll eat, and we'll sit down with some brothers that are more knowledgeable than me. Or maybe they have different types of knowledge than me, and we can discuss this. You know, it's very important to try to bring them into the environment of the masjid. And there's nothing wrong with kuffar coming into the masjid. There was the time of the Prophet ﷺ, kuffar used to come into the masjid. So we can invite them, we can have them sit with us, we can break some bread, we can have some food, and with that, inshallah, we can explain all these concepts to them with the people of knowledge. If it's something that we don't know here in the masjid, we'll go to the ulama, we'll ask them. Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this chain. One of the mistakes that du'at make a lot is they try to answer everything from their own intelligence. When they don't know the answer from the Qur'an and Sunnah, even some of the famous du'at like Dr. Zakir Naik and others, they've made some big mistakes by trying to answer questions that they didn't have the knowledge to answer. And we don't accept their mistakes, but we also don't completely reject their da'wah and their benefit because of their mistakes. Instead, we condemn what they do incorrectly and we encourage what they do that is correctly. Now, having said this, inshallah, we also want to ourselves increase our knowledge about Aqidah. So we discussed first about Tawheed al-Rububiyyah and then Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. That nobody is deserving of ibadah except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't make dua except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't make sajda, you don't make salah except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is known to us in the form of Tawheed by the fact that He's the only one that deserves to be worshipped. He is the only one that has the right to be worshipped. And with that, we believe in Tawheed of the Asma and Sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafoor, Rahim. He is known through so many, not just these 99 names that are mentioned through understanding of one hadith, but others than that are mentioned in the Qur'an, that are mentioned in the Sunnah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Himself with. We believe in all of them. Now, if somebody asks you about a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is meant by this? And if you don't know, say, I believe in it, because it's in the Qur'an, in the Sunnah, and I leave it as it is, and we can go to the ulama to understand it. We don't try to explain it away unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains it, or the Prophet ﷺ explained it. We don't make our own understandings of these things, because this is where the people of ta'wil, the people of kalam, they went astray. We don't need to fit Islam into Greek logic or Greek or Roman methodology. We don't need to fit our belief into this, because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us Ar-Rahmanu ala arsh istawa, yani the Ar-Rahman has istawa on the arsh, we believe in it. Khalas. It's in the Quran. We don't need to explain how. Al-Kayfiyah, al-Majhul, we don't know. To the fact that there is istawa, this is ma'loom from the Quran, as Imam Malik said, we believe in it. Al-Kayfiyah wal-Majhul, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't explain how, so we don't need to explain. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator. He is our Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of all the samawat and ard. The understanding in trying to put that into human idea is impossible. We don't try that. The aspects of believing in Allah that we have to believe and explain are easy. Allah is one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Samad. We'll explain what Samad is inshallah later. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anybody. Everybody is in need of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is powerful. He is Qadir. He is Qadir. He is Alim. He is Basir. He is Sami'. He's the one that hears everything. He's the one that sees everything. He's the one that knows everything. No beginning, no end. He is the one that created everything. He's not a man or a woman, a child or a father. This is easy and we can explain this. But if they say, what do you mean he has no beginning? Explain that to me. What do you mean there is no end? Explain that to me. We cannot truly comprehend these endless ideas because we are limited. Why can't we see Allah? Because we are in this dunya and Allah made it haram for us to see Him in dunya. Can we see Allah in the akhirah? Yes, we can. In Jannah, you will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as easily as you can see the moon, without giving tashbih of the moon to Allah, but the tashbih of our sight. You see how easy it is to see a full moon on a clear night? That's how easily, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, we'll see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So explain those concepts that are meant to be explained, and in other things you have to say, this is known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with this, we always try to take our questions back to the ulama. If there are questions in aqidah that come, that we don't understand, we take it back to the ulama and they explain it to us, and we can further that understanding, inshaAllah. We don't have anything in Islam that is confusing. We don't have anything in Islam that can't be explained. But we have things in Islam that are beyond human comprehension. Even if you look at how big is the sky, if you just keep looking and looking and looking, where will it end? And if it ends, what's after that? And what do you mean nothing? And something is something. You will just go crazy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these things out there for us to understand that not everything is to be rationalized in human ideas. Some things have to be accepted in things that are known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, we use that in our da'wah. One of the things I will end with inshallah right now is that one of the mistakes our du'at make is they think it's not important for them to know the Islamic aqidah. They only want to study the Bible and make rad on the Bible, and they want to attack things that are in the other faiths, but they really don't understand the course of your own religion. So when the questions come back, either you don't have an answer or you give the incorrect answer, and either one, both of those are pitfalls for the du'at. So I encourage you again to learn ilm, to learn knowledge, and know your faith well. Like one of the brothers, he wanted to study the Bible. One of the scholars told him, before you study the Bible, how much of the Qur'an have you studied? And if you haven't studied the Qur'an, go study that first, then you can study comparative religion, inshaAllah. Jazakumullah khairan. We'll stop here, inshaAllah.
من أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا